On a remote farm in the Bavarian countryside, a family began to notice strange things. Footprints in the snow that led to the house but never led away. Footsteps in the empty attic in the dead of night. Within days, all 6 people who lived there were dead. And then something even stranger happened. Someone stayed behind in the house, cooking meals and feeding the animals. The killer lived among the dead for days, calmly, as if at home. And to this day, no one knows who it was. This is the mystery of Hinterkaifeck. Welcome to Curio Hour, where we uncover the strange, the unsolved, and the unforgettable. Today's story: the Hinterkaifeck murders. The year was 1922. The place was Bavaria in southern Germany, a land of dark forests, quiet farms, and long, cold winters. The country was still reeling from the Great War, poor and uneasy. About 40 miles north of Munich stood a small farmstead. It had no proper name on most maps, but the locals called it Hinterkaifeck, meaning the farm behind the hamlet of Kaifeck. It was an isolated place, set apart from the village, surrounded by woods and open fields. The nearest neighbors were not close, and the farm kept to itself. The farm was home to the Gruber family. The head of the household was Andreas Gruber, a stern and difficult man in his 60s, known around the area for his bad temper. With him lived his wife, Cecilia, and his widowed daughter, Victoria. Victoria's 2 young children also lived on the farm, a 7-year-old girl, also named Cecilia, and a 2-year-old boy named Joseph. The family was not well liked, and rumors followed them. There were dark whispers in the village about the relationships inside that household. But out on the isolated farm, no one looked too closely. In the spring of 1922, the family needed a new maid. The previous one had left some months before, claiming the farm was haunted. She said she heard strange voices and footsteps, and she would not stay. A new maid, a woman named Maria Baumgartner, was hired. She arrived at Hinterkaifeck on the last day of March, 1922. She would be in the house for only a few hours before the horror began. But in the days leading up to her arrival, Andreas Gruber had begun to notice things. Deeply unsettling things that he could not explain. A few days earlier, he had found footprints in the fresh snow. They led from the edge of the forest directly toward his house. But there were no prints leading back. Whoever had made them had come to the farm and had not left. Gruber searched the property but found no one. Still, the prints disturbed him. Then came the sounds. He told neighbors he had heard footsteps in the attic above the house, when no one should have been up there. He climbed up to investigate the attic, but found nothing out of place. Yet the feeling that someone was there would not leave him. Other strange things happened. The family found a newspaper in the house that none of them had bought. The house key went missing, and Gruber noticed scratches and marks around the lock on a door. Today, looking back, these details are chilling. They strongly suggest that someone had already broken into the farm, that a stranger was hiding there in the attic, watching the family and waiting. But Andreas Gruber, for all his unease, did not call the police. He was a private, suspicious man, and he kept his troubles to himself. It was a decision that would prove fatal. We now believe the murders took place on the evening of March the 31st, 1922. What exactly happened that night, no one living knows. But investigators later pieced together a terrible sequence. It seems the killer lured the members of the family, one by one, out to the barn. Perhaps by some noise or some pretext that drew them out into the cold. There in the barn, 4 of them met their end. Andreas, his wife Cecilia, their daughter Victoria, and the little granddaughter, also called Cecilia. The weapon was a mattock, a heavy farming tool with a long blade used for breaking up soil. It was an implement found on almost any farm, ordinary and brutal. Inside the house, the killer then found the two who remained. The maid, Maria Baumgartner, in her room, and the toddler, Joseph, in his cot. Neither survived the night. In a single evening, the entire household, 6 people across 3 generations, had been wiped out. And then the killer did something that has haunted this case ever since. Instead of fleeing into the night, the murderer stayed. For days afterward, someone remained at Hinterkaifeck, living quietly inside the farmhouse where the family lay dead. Neighbors later recalled seeing smoke rising from the chimney over the following days. Someone was keeping the fire going. The cattle had been fed. The dog was still alive. And food in the kitchen had been eaten. The killer had moved into the home of the people he had just murdered, calmly tending the farm as if nothing at all had happened. It is one of the most disturbing details in the history of crime. The outside world did not yet know, but signs began to gather. The little girl, Kazilia, did not appear at school. The family failed to attend church on Sunday, which was unheard of. The new maid, who had only just arrived, did not send word to her family as expected. And the postman noticed that mail was piling up, uncollected, at the farm. Finally, on the 4th of April, several concerned neighbors decided to walk out to Hinterkaifeck together to see what was wrong. What they found would never leave them. In the barn, they discovered the bodies of the 4 family members, carefully covered with hay and an old door. Inside the house, they found the maid and the little boy. The horror of the scene was beyond anything the quiet community had ever known. Word spread quickly, and soon the police arrived from Munich to take charge of the investigation. But the crime scene had a serious problem. In the days since the murders, curious neighbors and onlookers had walked freely through the property and even cooked and eaten meals in the farmhouse kitchen. By the standards of forensic science today, the scene was hopelessly contaminated. Any evidence the killer might have left behind was trampled, moved, or destroyed before the experts ever arrived. Still, the investigators did what they could. Detectives from Munich examined the bodies, questioned the neighbors, and tried to reconstruct what had happened in those final days. They quickly concluded that robbery was not the motive. A significant amount of money was found untouched inside the house. Whoever had done this had not come for valuables. That made the crime even harder to understand. If not for money, then why? Why kill an entire family, including small children, and then stay on the farm for days afterward? The footprints in the snow, the footsteps in the attic, the missing key. All of it pointed to a killer who had known the family, watched them, and perhaps lived hidden in their house for days before striking. This suggested a deeply personal motive. Hatred, revenge, or some private grievance that the outside world knew nothing about. But the Grubers had kept their secrets, and the dead could not speak. Over the years, the police questioned more than 100 suspects. They followed leads across Germany and beyond. But no charge ever stuck, and no confession ever came. One disturbing theory centered on Victoria's husband, Karl, who had supposedly been killed in the First World War. Some wondered if he had secretly returned and taken a terrible revenge. But it was never proven. Others suspected neighbors, jealous rivals, or a drifter who had been seen in the area. Each theory had its supporters, and each one collapsed for lack of hard evidence. The case stayed open for decades. German police returned to it again and again, re-examining the old files with fresh eyes as the years passed. As late as 2007, students at a police academy took up the case as a training exercise, using modern methods to study the surviving evidence. They reportedly reached a conclusion and a name. But out of respect for the descendants of the person they suspected, who was long dead, they chose never to release that name publicly. And so even their answer remains a sealed door. The farmhouse itself was torn down a year after the murders. In the ruins, workers found one final, eerie detail. The mattock, the murder weapon, was discovered hidden in the attic. The attic where Andreas Gruber had heard those footsteps. The attic where the unseen stranger had perhaps been hiding all along. The killer had left his weapon in the very place where the haunting began. A small shrine was later built near the site, in memory of the 6 victims. The fields are quiet now, and few signs remain of the farm that once stood there. But the questions remain as sharp as ever. Who walked through the snow to that lonely house? Who waited in the attic? And who stayed behind feeding the animals while a family lay dead in the barn? A century has passed and we still have no certain answers. Hinterkaifeck remains one of the most haunting unsolved crimes in all of European history. 6 lives ended in a single night. A killer who never ran. And a silence that has lasted for 100 years. The mystery of Hinterkaifeck has never been solved.